The time is now.
They gon' love me for my ambition. Easy to dream a dream, but what's harder to live?
In progress.
Progress.
Man, what is going on? I don't even know what episode we're at anymore.
Shoot.
I don't know. I think 13.
We're gonna say 13.
All right.
Taking breaks is not good, man.
I'll do like a little blurb over what it actually is around there.
Exactly.
Man.
What's up, y'all? What's up, ambitious mind, family, tribe, team? What's going on, y'all? Man, sorry it's been a minute again. Actually, right before this, me and Brad were just talking about finding a way to make sure that this gets back into our normal schedule. Life has been busy, busy to say the least.
It's crazy how like one thing too will throw you off so bad. Like if we wouldn't have had the what was it, corrupt file, man, we were solid, man. We were like weeks running, we were good.
Yeah. But it's one of those things, man. It just always constantly reminds you, like, no excuses.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Excuses, I don't do well with excuses, but, some just to keep in mind. But then also, I think it's always important. I remember it's David Shands, Sleepers with Suckers. And he always talks about, not quitting your job because you don't have time, right? Because he was like, people assume that they have time, so they quit their job, whatever. It's like, if you couldn't make your time while you were doing it, right? While you were doing your job, you're not going to have any extra time. Just because you quit your job, because you're going to find someone else to replace that time. And it's not going to be what you think it's going to be like. So,
absolutely.
For sure, man. Like that's definitely something. So we hope y'all missed us, but we back. So, but yeah, B, what's going on, man? How's life? How's real estate? What's new?
Man, life is busy, of course. I know I just vented to you right before we got started over this week, man. Happens in threes, and I think today was number 3, so fingers crossed. But no, other than that though, dude, honestly, things have been really busy, which is good, of course. Good kind of busy. Real estate scaling to the point of like, man, like I it's exciting. It's exciting. Yeah. It's exhausting. It's a lot. It's long days, but man, I fall in love with it more and more. Like it's so fun for real. So that's been going really well though, and I think I'm gonna be on pace to meet my end of the year goal if this keeps rolling. So all good stuff, man. What about you?
Nothing much, man. Honestly, just dealing with the workforce that we live in right now. People not wanting to work. That is super duper hard. And those that do want to work, it's like they're like, hey, I just need a paycheck. Can you get me on that? And it's just like, yeah, I actually need you to do a little something though. I need you to actually work and participate and be engaged. So but I know everybody's kind of dealing with that, right? So definitely can't be that woe is me, because everybody's kind of dealing with it right now. So just trying to be patient through that all, man, and trying to give some uplifting to my teams as well, though, because, super duper hard when you're in that fight and you're short-staffed or you're short-handed, and just trying to give them some uplifting words, some encouragement, man, just to keep on pushing and realize it's only a season, right? Or try to look at it as just a season, just hope that it gets better. Hope is not a strategy, but hope is, I think, needed to keep the ball rolling at time. So
peaks and valleys. Peaks and valleys.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, man. So I know we kind of talked about this before we hopped on, but so I was listening to actually a shift leader of mine. She put me on a podcast called On Purpose by Jay Shetty, which a lot of you probably have heard of. So every now and then I listen to a couple podcasts. I listen to one with like Big Sean, and the other day, every now and then, like Kobe Bryant pops up on either my timeline or my YouTube page, just of different talks and stuff that he did. And there was one with him and Jay Shetty, so I went to go check it out, man. And it was It was great. It was great. And it's funny because growing up, Kobe, like I respected him as a player. I knew he was great. He just wasn't my favorite, right?
Mhm.
But he became my favorite after he retired for some reason. It was weird, but the information and how he speaks and how he does presentations and podcasts and everything else that he got involved in afterwards, man, was just like mind blowing.
Yeah.
So they talked a lot about it, but I know something that I had mentioned to you was he had talked about this unpacking your fear, right? He said one thing that he was really big on was unpacking his fear. And he said, when you unpack your fear, one, you realize what you think you're really scared of. For the most part, it's really an illusion. Like it's not that scary, right? But you have to unpack it. And a lot of times we just say that we're afraid of things or we have a fear and we don't unpack why we're really afraid of those things. So
Mhm.
I thought that might be a good topic for us to chop up about, man, and just kind
Yeah,
of flow from there.
I like it. I like it. There's a lot. Not that we haven't talked about fear on this podcast already, but I think it's one of the most limiting beliefs that a person can have, especially if they're pursuing something or if they're growing in an area. I think especially in entrepreneurship, you experience fear nonstop, nonstop. So it's more about how you handle it. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I know you and I we've both experienced this. You know, whether it's a career change, whether it's just for you, even just getting into a new industry as a whole,
Yeah.
you've switched industries, three different industries now, long term,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, that's an adjustment in itself. I mean, I know there's fear going into that. Like you and I had talked about, the jump from Planet to Smoothie King, even. I mean, it's totally different lifestyle, man. Like that's so different.
Yeah.
Right? Like what did that look like for you? Like how did that thought process go?
Yeah, man. I think I'm still going through that thought process because there's always different things that pop up. And, I've even had some situations this week where I'm just like, man, like you feel like your heart starts racing and stuff,
Mhm.
whatever. And like, you start getting anxiety about like the silliest of things, right? And it's just like, man, where is this fear coming from? Right. And interesting enough, I think a lot of fear, like once I unpack it, it's just because it's going to lead to me being uncomfortable,
Mm.
right? And I think a lot of us are deathly afraid of being uncomfortable, right? As good as a leader as you can be, right? I think everybody gets into that stage of I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Nobody's really comfortable with being uncomfortable,
You're
right?
not really uncomfortable if you're still
Right.
comfortable, you know?
I think that's something that you definitely work towards,
Mhm.
right? And I think there have been some people that probably have mastered it, but man, that's a lifelong work because depending on the intensity of how uncomfortable you're going to be, I think that's what drives the fear, right? Because if you weren't uncomfortable and there was no change, because I think that's the other thing is change. If there's nothing to be uncomfortable about and there's nothing to change, really there's nothing to fear,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, man, it's an everyday thing for me. And as once I heard this podcast, man, I kind of go through that constantly, right? Like even being in our situation right now with having a hard time finding employees, you have to, specifically me, but also pushing this down to our managers, you have to continue to hold people accountable.
Mhm.
The people that are under, people that are under your leadership, and it's super duper hard because you don't want to lose that person.
Right.
Okay, that's the fear. The fear is if I tell you, hey, we can do this better. Hey, you're doing this wrong. Man, it's a scary feeling. You start to feel like, okay, maybe I need to say it nicer or softer, right? Which
Mhm.
sometimes that could be the case. But then you don't want to get to a point where you started saying something and it's not holding, right? Because if it doesn't hold, are you really keeping them accountable,
Right.
right? And when you unpack that fear, for me, the biggest thing was when I unpacked the fear of, okay, what if I lost a manager because I held them to the fire and I held them to, I made them accountable. I lose them. Okay, that sucks, right? If I don't have any backup, I'm probably working in that store for a little while, right? Which me and you both know I've done that a few times already. So even though I don't like it all the time, I've done it, right? And eventually I will find somebody
Right.
to fill that spot. It might not be tomorrow, it might not be next week. Eventually I will find somebody to fill that spot. I'll be able to relay expectations, hold them accountable, and keep it going,
Right.
right? And once I unpack that fear, I'm like, man, fear really ain't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's not gonna be fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't think unpacking your fear makes you try, unpacking your fear doesn't mean you try to make yourself feel better,
Right.
right? It's just realizing the reality of the actual situation.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. Because I think, when we decided to talk about this, the best way that I could summarize is unpacking your fear is adjusting your perspective. If you're living in fear in a current situation, it's because your perspective hasn't shifted yet. You haven't adjusted the way that you're viewing the situation. um, I think that you go through stages when you approach fear. I think it's necessary for you to experience fear in order for you to identify, the perspective shift that then needs to happen next. If somebody comes up to you, and because I personal example, because I just went through this, I just shared with you,
Yeah.
you made a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody comes up to you and you messed up. And that feeling of like, you just go numb, you start to sweat a little bit, and you're
Yep.
like, what you mean? What do you mean I messed up? Like, what?
Not me.
Yeah. And I backtracked, I look at everything, you know what? I messed up. So then it really hits you. And sitting in that fear, and this is great because I just had this literally yesterday. Sitting in that fear, it's like, yeah, this sucks. And identify where you're at, identify the situation, and like appreciate it though. And in this specific example, like I had to reach out to this person and own up to it and have a conversation and just say like, hey, I apologize. Like I made this mistake. I messed up, on me, take full responsibility.
Yeah.
What can I do to make it right? Um, but I could not have approached that conversation and have facilitated that conversation well if I had stayed in the same fear-based perspective of the situation. I think similar to what you said, it's like you look at the bigger picture for a second. You have to take a step back and you're like, yeah, this sucks. And you either use this as a moment to make or break you. You're either going to be better because of it, or you're going to let it eat you up and it's going to make you worse ultimately. And you have to make that decision. And when you take the step back and you're like, you know what? Yeah, I messed up. I made a
Yeah.
mistake. I'll tell you right now, I ain't never going to do that again. For one, it's going to make me a better person. It's going to make me a better agent. And instantly, man, like when that type of stuff starts happening to me, I start thinking about, it's not about what happens to you, it's about what you do after it's happened.
Yeah.
And it's not about the action, it's about how you're reacting. That's what defines you. The action is not what defines you, it's how you handle it next. So looking at it through that lens, it's like, okay, this situation isn't going to change. This is where I'm at. What can I do next? Because that's what matters. That's what comes next. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, like being able to take a step back and say, you know what, I'm comfortable taking responsibility. I'm going to own up. I'm going to have this conversation. I'm going to approach it with grace because I'm going to use this as a teaching moment for myself. I
Yep.
hope someday I get to have a conversation with an agent and they're going to be complaining to me. And I'm going to say, you know what? You know what I did one time? You ain't got to worry about nothing. Okay. Listen, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And like being able to laugh about that moment before you're in that moment. You know what I'm saying? Like take a step back. It's okay. And I think, a lot of people get really worked up and really like hold on to things for a long time. And man, like that's not what life is about. That's not,
Yeah.
don't hold on to that stuff. Use it as a growth tool and you'll be better. Keep it rolling.
Yeah. Question for you. Do you think there's different levels of fear? Do you think there's a healthy fear and an unhealthy fear?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, because I feel like there's different magnitudes of fear. I think that there's like, it's kind of like a pain, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes you have just like an aching pain, it just kind of lingers and it's there. Yeah, I think that's maybe some of the constant fear that you live in. It's there, you're aware of it, but it's tolerable.
Mm.
And then I think that there's big things, um, like what happened to me this week, to be honest with you, like somebody might be like, you know what, that's too much. I can't do this. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I don't know, it might depend on the person and their tolerance and like how are they looking at everything. But I also think it depends on the person. One person's ache could be another person's like I don't know, stab wound. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think it depends, but yeah, I think that there's a difference, and I think it has to be more of a reflection on what's important to that person, and that's what's going to stimulate where the fear is coming from.
Yeah. I like that. I like what you said. You kind of summed that up. You said tolerance,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's a good question. Like, what's your fear tolerance?
Mm, yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like, how much fear can you take? And when that fear comes, what happens? Right?
yeah,
And I think that might be the difference between people that come out of situations that they're afraid of, they come out on the other end, and those that don't come out on the other end because it got too much to them and they didn't know how to unpack it,
right, yeah,
right? So let's actually talk about that for a second, like what it looks like to unpack, because I think there's different ways that you can look at it, right? And I know I shared my example of, for me, I just kind of like mentally went through those
hmm,
things, but do you think there's some other ways that people can unpack their fear, or what might some other ways look like?
man, yeah, I definitely think so. I think shoot, it's hard because I also think a lot of it's probably situational. It depends on, how you're going to approach a situation next. But to really unpack where the fear is coming from, I think it has to start with you. I
Okay.
think you have to start with yourself and asking the question of why am I feeling this way that I'm feeling, and start there, kind of search it. If I'm using the specific example for this week, for me, it's, sitting there, I'm scared because it's my reputation, it's my work, it's, it's something that's important to me, which is why I was fearful, because this is meaningful. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
when there's something that comes up that jeopardizes something that is meaningful to you, uh, that stimulates the fear.
Yep.
So identifying that and then being able to say, okay, you know what? Yes, that is all true. But then back to what I said before, it's less about what happened now. It's more about what do I do moving forward? Do I want to own up to it and be a person of integrity, and looking at it from the other person's perspective? What would they want? What
Yeah.
would they expect? How are they going to want this situation be handled if this was happening to you? And using all of these questions to then help that perspective shift. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
um I mean, like for you too, like when you went from Planet, or actually I think a better example might even be Target, because of how you applied to Planet as more of a joke. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like man, I can only imagine what you were thinking to getting the phone call that you were hired and going from retail to running a gym. Like,
Yeah.
what did you do?
Actually, that wasn't even the fear. It wasn't the fear of switching industries.
Yeah.
For me, because it's a little different than Planet to Smoothie King, simply because at that point I had been an hourly employee for 9.5 years. Right, started when I was 16, worked all through college, grad school, and everything like that. I think my biggest thing was this was going to be a leadership role that I was one of the top dogs, right?
Mhm.
Versus at Target, I'll help run the front end of the store. But I mean, you got so many layers, or at the time you had so many layers in Target, right? That's just like that's semi the bottom, right? So you messed up, whatever, it wasn't the end of the world. Like
Mhm.
my boss and their boss's boss and their boss's boss take care of it, and you're good, right? So at this level, though, there was only one person that was above me, and then that was only for a short period of time. But I think the biggest thing was at that time I didn't know how to unpack my fear, and so every day, to a certain extent, I walked in afraid because I'm just like, shoot, like I don't know what will happen, right? and these people are going to be like, Eris, you have final say. Like, what do we do? Right? Paperwork. And that's one of the things that has always shook me is paperwork. All right. I'm just like, okay, I don't, I don't like paperwork. I'm just like, can we hire somebody? I know there's no salary for this, but can we hire somebody to do my admin work? I just want to spend time with the people.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. So I think the biggest fear for that was just going into a role where I was that guy.
Yeah.
And although it was exciting because it's like, man, salary job, I get the same paycheck every single week or every other week, right? That part was like that I was excited about for sure. But then realizing that paycheck comes with responsibilities, I think that was the part that had some fear to it. And I'm gonna recommend this because I don't think companies should hide anything, but I think when you put out your job descriptions online, right, condense them some, and for real, because when you look at jobs online and you see the job description, man, it's like 3 pages long.
Yeah.
And as you keep reading, like you build fear because some of those things you don't know how to do, right? And it's not like they put in there, we're going to train you on this, right? And then they say experience either required or experience preferred, right? Experience in one of these million things that you put on here.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Because I might have experienced 100 of these, but the other 900,900, I haven't done anything. You know what I'm saying? Like I have no idea what this possibly could look like. I haven't used this program. I've done payroll before, but I haven't used this program, right? And like I said, I think part of that then goes back to us, right? Just as in, okay, when you unpack the fear, right? Why are you really applying for this job? And so when you start thinking about that, right, it might be, make a difference for your family. It might be because you want to make some extra money. It might be because it's the field that you've always wanted to get into is, okay, just go for it, right? And then you'll constantly go through the process of unpacking the fear because they'll be like, hey, all right, so we're going to do this today. And you're like, oh, shoot, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And then you have to unpack it again. So most definitely, man. But I think so. What I was trying to ask, because you hit on a couple of things of how to unpack it, and I think one of the things I was thinking of as well is unpack it. Sometimes you can do it mentally. Sometimes I think it's good if you write it down, right? Because I think writing it down, one, it helps you remind you. Because say that you go through a similar fear, you can kind of look back at that. But then I think another major one, man, is having a good support system.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. I think about, having Cam, having people in my church family, having you, man, like when I have certain fears, I can unpack it. Now I might not come to y'all and be like, hey, I'm afraid of this. Help me out.
Yeah, it's said different. Yeah.
Is it, you said what?
You say it differently, but basically,
oh yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
For sure. And so I think that's huge, man. So, it makes you want to ask, who's in your circle, right? Can you share your fears with people? Right? Because I think sometimes that, I notice trying to catch up with some people, I ask how things are going. They're like, oh, things are going great. That's what I'm saying. And hey, it might really be going great. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to call BS on it. It might be going great. Right? But part of me is just like, sometimes if somebody asks me how things are going, I want to say pretty good, right? Because I kind of want to match that energy or match that vibe. But it's like, man, like you need those people in your life. Like, man, like it ain't going too hot, bro. It's not going too hot. And I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I'm freaking out. Like you need those people because if not, you internalize all of that. And I'm guilty of this 100%. But you internalize it all, man. And that does nothing but heighten the fear and doesn't allow you space or room to unpack it.
Right. Absolutely. One thing that you were talking about earlier is how, the switch from Target to, I keep wanting to say Target.
That's fine if you want to.
Target to Planet. You were like, I came in scared. I came in fear. It's like, what was the difference that you've noticed in your leadership when you were leading in fear still versus when you really fully embraced that role and that fear was eliminated, that constant fear at least? Like, did you notice a difference in yourself between the two?
Yeah, and I'll put it this way: I think every day came with a healthy sense of fear,
Mm,
and what I mean is there was always the fear of the unknown,
mm,
right? I don't think I walk into any situation that I am 100% sure on the way and just walk in. Like you can still walk in with confidence, but still have a small sense of fear. And I think that's, in my opinion, I think that's good,
yeah,
right? Because if you are that numb to fear, right? I think you end up falling into some stupid stuff, or you end up doing some stupid stuff, right? Or you put yourself such on a high pedestal that you feel like you can't be knocked down. And then when you are, you have a very hard time of picking yourself back up,
right,
right? And so I think I always walked in, and this is even every day, here at Smoothie King, I walk in with a healthy sense of fear, just as I don't know what the day is going to bring, right? But I think to battle that fear, there's also a high sense of excitement and passion that comes along with it that kind of overrides it, right? Where it's still there in the back of my head, right? But it's not the main focus. It's not how that fear doesn't determine how my day is going to go. My passion, the value that I add, and the things that I bring to the table, my leadership, that's what leads my day. That's how my day typically turns out. But that sense of fear is there just simply because you don't know how it's going to go. I think that sense of fear also helps you become self-aware, right?
right,
Because then you actually take a second to reflect on the situation before you just go for it,
right,
right? Like I give it to people that can make decisions like that, right? Depending on what the situation is, right? But I've seen some people make huge decisions and they just like, okay, this is what we're gonna do,
hmm,
right? I'm just like, okay.
man,
For me,
yeah,
I'm just like, at least give me five. Let me unpack it real quick.
right,
Let me make sure, because making a decision, then you have to live with that depending on how intense it is. You got to live with that, and I think that's where the healthy sense of fear comes in,
yeah.
right?
And I think the difference, though, and I'm sure you agree, is it's not the nagging sense of fear that you walk in every day and you're like, oh boy, what's gonna happen
Yeah,
today?
exactly.
It like that's not the attitude. It's a I'm excited and I'm ready to see what today is gonna bring. Like
Hmm.
that's two so very polar opposite perspectives of the fear going into the day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think you and I have both seen what both of those look like. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, for sure. Um, tell me, like, now, being in real estate, right? What's the what would you say is your fear ratio, or your toleration for fear right now? Because you have a lot, in my opinion, when I think about real estate, you have a lot of times that people can say no. You have a lot of times that people can change their mind, right? And it's major life situations, right?
Mhm.
Somebody told me they don't like a smoothie. Okay, cool. I remake it for them, or I give them their money back, right? In your situation, it's not that easy. Somebody can't just get a refund on the house because they don't like it no more, or once they sign some stuff, whatever. Like, there's a lot of legal stuff that goes through that. So, what is your fear going into some of those? Is there a healthy fear, or what is that like for you?
It's a healthy fear, similar to what you said. And one of the things that gave me perspective starting out was my dad. He's been doing this 25 years. And one of the things that he told me multiple times getting started, he's like, I've been doing this 25 years and every transaction is still different.
Mhm.
He's like, I'm still learning every day. He's
Yeah.
like, I can't say that I've had any two transactions that are the same. He's like, this industry is forever changing and it's up to us to adapt and grow and change with it. And honestly, hearing that and knowing that about the industry gives me a sense of comfort because
Mhm.
it makes me okay with not knowing. It makes me okay with being able to say, you know what, I'm not 100% sure. Let me
Yep.
get back to you though, because I will find out, which, you always do. But it's like there's a sense of comfort with that. I don't feel like I go into every situation feeling like I need to know the answers. I go into every situation knowing what value I'm bringing to my clients and the support that I'm bringing to my clients. And for me and them, that's what's important. And for me to be able to be as knowledgeable as possible and to find those answers and to make sure that they're entering one of these biggest transactions of their life in confidence. And they're only going to be confident if I am. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm well, I think this is it, like
Yep.
who that man, like
Yep.
nobody wants that. Nobody wants to work with that. So being comfortable saying, I don't know, but I will find out for you, and giving them a definite for sure answer versus, the uncertainty, and just understanding that I'm not going to know everything. But the fear that comes with it is always there, and I think it should be, especially when you're dealing with these large of transactions, and this is people's money, man. Like this is not just like little bit of money, this is like people's
This ain't no
money,
McDouble.
man. Like like I have a transaction right now that I'm doing, and it's almost a $500,000 house, man. I'm talking to the buyers, wonderful, wonderful people, and I've had such a blast working with them and the relationship that we've built. But the husband's talking to me is like, I've never once thought I'd be spending this much money in a single transaction in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah.
I'm glad you are with
Yeah,
me.
exactly. I'm like, man, like, yeah, like I can imagine, and
Yeah.
but it just, there's so many things that go into it specifically for, I think, real estate, and maybe this applies to other industries too, but it's just being punctual, speaking with integrity. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. These are all things that build confidence, and it's the way that you present yourself and the way you communicate. Live in fear each day, not knowing what today is going to bring, but it's exciting, and it's a growth opportunity. So again, I think a lot of this fear, based conversation has so much to do about perspective. And I think that's why you see some people that slip and they do get into maybe a negative or poor mindset. It's
Yeah.
because you start asking them some of these questions, their answers are going to be way different because their perspective has shifted, and they're looking at it from the doom and gloom and not from the the leadership, the learner base, the perspective shift. It's
Yeah.
it changes. It does. I don't think you're consistently one or the other. I think you can always strive to be more than one than the other, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
uh we're human.
Yep.
We're human. um In fact, when I had to fess up to the mistake I made this week, that's one thing I kept saying. I said, I'm feeling really human today. I was like, I'm feeling really
Yeah.
human today. It's like, and that happens.
Yeah. No, for sure, man. You mentioned something. I just want to spend a little time on this, but I think you mentioned something to the extent of knowing yourself, right, and the value that you bring, right, and I think that's a huge thing with unpacking fear, is knowing who you are,
Mm,
right,
yes.
and for those that are believers, knowing whose you
Mm,
are, right, knowing that you serve a God that didn't give you the spirit of fear in the first place,
yeah.
right. So that's always challenging for Christians when you talk about fear, because it's like, man, he didn't give me the spirit of fear anyway, right? That doesn't mean that you just go out there and do whatever. Okay.
Right.
Once again, I do think there's some healthy fear, but I think just knowing who you are, right? Do you know you? Right. And one thing that my leadership coach has been working on with me is he's been making me do some self-affirmations,
Mm,
right? And I think sometimes when unpacking fear, you have to remind yourself who you are,
yeah.
right?
Mm,
You have to remind yourself of the things that you've accomplished. You have to remind yourself that you've gotten this far,
mm.
right?
Preach. Come
Um,
on. Come on. Preach.
but you have to remind yourself of that, man. You have to know who you are.
Hmm.
I think that you when you said that, man, it was just like, shoot, like I think that's the first step. First
Mm,
step of unpacking fear is, of course, like realizing what the situation is, man. But then very quickly, you have to remember who you are.
yeah.
If you don't know who you are, that fear will control you, and you won't be able to properly unpack it, because you might say, oh, okay, well, in my example, right? Say if I lose a manager, I have to go in there or whatever. But if I'm not confident enough in who I am, right? I will then, even though I might hold that person accountable, I will then walk into a situation and say they did quit. And I will live in fear every single day simply because I don't know who I am and I'm not confident enough in myself. And so then that probably bleeds over to the team and creates even more of a mess.
Right.
And now every day, because of that fear and not knowing who I am, I'm destroying everything around me.
That's right. That's right. So difficult roads lead to beautiful destinations, baby.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's funny though, when you said that, I was looking at it, I'm just, that picture looks pretty beautiful. I don't know if that's the end of the road. Or that's the beginning. That's the beginning. It's quite attractive.
No, man, I'm so glad you brought that up though, because I don't know how, when we were talking about what other ways of unpacking fear can look like, prayer, man, every time.
Yep.
Prayer. I mean, I'll tell you what, before I made that phone call, Emily and I were sitting at the kitchen table and we prayed before I went out there to call. It's like, allow me to speak in the way that you would want me to speak. I mean, when you have that in your corner, man, that changes so much. And I think it goes along though with, like, it's not that you don't care so much, but that you're handling the situation the best way possible, and I think that you find comfort in that too. So, yeah, but no, you're spot on. I'm glad you brought that up.
I mean, this was a fun topic, man. Like I said, it started off with just the quote, but man, I think and there's so many different angles we could have went with this, right? Because I think a huge thing for us to cover, and maybe maybe we have this when we have one of our entrepreneurs on, is to kind of go down that thing of how do you unpack fear, right? Because I know one thing that we talked about was the more action you take, the more you think it's possible, right? Which I think we could definitely hop on that next week for sure. But yeah, man, unpacking fear it's a huge thing. Fear is there. It's not going anywhere. We're all afraid of something.
Right.
The question is, how are you going to unpack it? How are you going to make sure that you realize and not let the fear control your destiny, not control who you are as a person? How do you truly unpack that? So
definitely good stuff, man. Good stuff. Man, there's so many more things that I could say about it too.
I know. But it's called just trying to, man, just let y'all know, we're trying to be a little more structured. So therefore, y'all don't have to hear us rambling for like hours, because we definitely can do that. But yeah, man, maybe what we'll do is we'll tap into this next week, because I'm pretty sure we'll think of some of the stuff and we can kind of lead that into the more action you take, the more you think it's possible. So as always, y'all, follow, subscribe, check us out. We will be more consistent at this, right? Wherever it is. We will be more consistent with this, y'all. We thank y'all for checking us out, giving us a listen, man. So BD, unless you got anything else, man.
No, sir. I better save it for next one, man, because I'll get going. So till next time, ladies and gents.
Peace.
Ambition is priceless. It's something that's in your veins, and I put that on my name. They gon' love me for my ambition.